Okay, so like imagine this, right? You're out with your friends, having a good time, maybe at a bar or a party. Music's bumping, conversation's flowing, you're on your, second or third drink?
Yeah.
Pretty standard, yeah. But here's the thing that's kind of always bugged me. When does just enjoying a drink turn into having one too many? Where's that line?
Yeah, it can be tough to tell sometimes, right? It's definitely way more complicated than it seems. And this ebook, Addiction to Alcohol, dives deep into that gray area.
Totally. So in this deep dive, we're ditching those kind of vague ideas about just problem drinking and really trying to unpack what alcohol addiction actually is. What are the warning signs? How can we spot them? Maybe even in ourselves. No judgment here, promise. Just straight talk about something that touches pretty much everyone's life at some point, right?
Right. And before we get into it, we got to mention that everything we're talking about today is just for informational purposes. We're not medical professionals or anything, so if you hear anything that really resonates with you, don't hesitate to reach out to a doctor or therapist for personalized help.
Definitely. Always better to be safe than sorry, right?
Yeah.
One of the things I found interesting in this ebook was how it busts some of those common myths about alcoholism. We've all got that picture in our heads of what we think a typical alcoholic looks like, but it's often way more subtle than that, isn't it?
For sure. It's not like there's this switch that flips from totally fine to struggling with addiction. It's more like a dimmer switch, slowly increasing in intensity over time. And yeah, those early warning signs, they can be easy to miss if you don't know what you're looking for.
Okay, so what are some of those red flags people should be watching out for?
One that really jumped out from the ebook was this idea of sudden, drastic mood swings after someone starts drinking. There's even a quote in there about how someone struggling with alcohol might go from normal to angry or violent super quickly. It's not just about having one too many and getting a little goofy. It's about these intense, out-of-character shifts in behavior.
Whoa, yeah, that's actually kind of scary when you put it like that. It's easy to brush those early signs off as someone just being tipsy when it could be a sign of something deeper going on.
Exactly. And that's why understanding that alcoholism is a progressive disease is so important. The book makes it clear that those seemingly small issues, if they're not addressed, can spiral into much more serious symptoms. We're talking consistently drinking more than you planned, neglecting important responsibilities because you'd rather be drinking, even experiencing withdrawal symptoms like anxiety or not being able to sleep when you're not drinking. That's when you know alcohol is starting to take control.
That makes a lot of sense. Which leads to a question I think a lot of people have. Is it nature or nurture? Are some people just born with this predisposition to alcoholism? Or is it more about our choices and the environments we're exposed to?
The age-old debate, right? Nature versus nurture. But the thing is, when it comes to addiction, it's almost never that black and white. This ebook delves into some seriously fascinating research, suggesting that our genes might actually influence how our bodies react to alcohol and how, satisfied we feel from drinking.
Wait, hold on. So you're saying some people might be more susceptible to alcohol's effects just because of their DNA? Okay, now I got to hear more about this research. What's the deal with that?
So the ebook uses this really relatable example. Imagine two people, right? They each have 2 shots of vodka. One person, they feel a little buzz, nothing crazy. The other person, they're feeling it way more, maybe even a little tipsy. This difference, it could actually be linked to variations in their genes, specifically the ones related to how our bodies break down alcohol.
So someone's genetic makeup could determine whether they're a 2-drink person or a 5-drink person. I always figured it was more about how much someone weighs or if they ate before drinking.
Oh, those factors definitely play a role. But what's wild is that our genes can influence our experience with alcohol on this whole other level, down to how our cells react.
Okay, now you're really blowing my mind here.
Yeah.
Break this down for me. How do our genes actually impact how our brains and bodies react to alcohol?
So it all comes down to brain chemistry. You know how when you experience something pleasurable, whether it's a delicious meal, a good laugh, or even a drink, your brain releases these chemicals called endorphins. They're basically your brain's natural feel-good messengers.
Okay, yeah, endorphins, those little bursts of happiness our brain produces. Got it. But what does that have to do with alcohol specifically?
Some studies suggest that people who naturally produce lower levels of endorphins might be more prone to seeking out those external sources of pleasure, like alcohol, to make up for that difference. It's like their brains are wired to crave that extra boost of feel-good chemicals that alcohol can, at least temporarily, provide.
So if your brain isn't producing enough of those happy chemicals on its own, you might be more likely to turn to alcohol to fill that void. But is there any real hard evidence to back this up?
There is. The ebook actually talks about this study from the University of Granada that found children of alcoholics might be genetically predisposed to having lower endorphin levels. This suggests a potential link between your genes and how vulnerable you might be to alcohol dependence. It's like inheriting a blueprint that makes you more susceptible to alcohol's pull.
Wow, that's a pretty strong connection.
Yeah.
So if you have family history of alcohol addiction, does that mean you're destined to follow down that same path? Like, is it a done deal?
That's where things get tricky. While genetics might play a part, they don't determine your entire destiny. The book makes it clear that it's not as simple as bad genes equal addiction. It even asks the question, is it all in our genes? And the answer is a definite no.
So it's not a life sentence. But if it's not all about genetics, what else is going on? What other factors are contributing to someone crossing that line into alcohol addiction?
See, that's what makes this whole topic so fascinating and so complex. It's like this, maybe your genes load the gun, but it's a whole bunch of other things that pull the trigger. Environmental influences, social pressures, individual experiences, how you cope with stress. It's all connected.
Okay, so we've established that genetics might make someone more vulnerable to alcohol's effects, but it's not like a guaranteed path to addiction.
Yeah.
If it's not all in our DNA, then what else is going on here? What pushes someone to develop an actual problem with alcohol?
That's where this whole idea of stages of alcoholism comes in, which the ebook goes into in detail. And I think a lot of people picture these stages as like, okay, you hit level 1 and level 2 and so on, but it's not really like that, is it?
It's not like you wake up one day and bam, you're an alcoholic. It's got to be more fluid, right?
Exactly. It's more like a spectrum or a scale that people move along at their own pace. They might even move back and forth a bit. So the ebook starts with this thing called the pre-alcoholic phase, which might sound kind of intense, but it doesn't mean everyone who enjoys a beer is on the fast track to addiction or anything.
Right. So what exactly is the pre-alcoholic stage?
Basically, it's this phase where people start using alcohol as a way to deal with, stress, anxiety, tough emotions, that kind of thing, like pouring a big glass of wine after a long day or needing a few drinks to loosen up in social situations. And yeah, while this might seem pretty harmless at first, it can often come with a gradual increase in tolerance.
The whole holding your liquor thing, like it's a badge of honor. Oh, they can really hold their drinks.
Yeah.
But really, that just means your body's getting used to having alcohol in your system, which might be an early sign of a potential problem, right?
You got it. And as that tolerance grows, the ebook explains that people often find themselves needing more and more alcohol to get the same buzz. They might not even realize it's happening, but they're slowly drinking more and more over time.
So when does it go from just enjoying a drink or two to like a real issue? When does it cross that line into alcoholism?
That's where the early alcoholic stage comes in. This is often when people start to realize, maybe my relationship with alcohol has changed a bit. They might try to cut back, but find it's harder than they thought it would be.
And that's when those little white lies come in, like downplaying how much you're really drinking.
Totally. You start sneaking in extra drinks when no one's watching, or hiding how much you bought at the store, or coming up with all these excuses for why you need another drink. That's a big red flag.
It's almost like it's driven by shame, right? You kind of know deep down your drinking might be a problem, but you're too embarrassed to admit it, so you keep it hidden.
Exactly. Shame and secrecy are like the best friends of addiction, unfortunately. And the thing is, if it's not dealt with, it can spiral into this middle alcoholic stage where the consequences become way more obvious, not just for the person drinking, but for everyone around them too.
Yeah, that's when those cracks start to show in other parts of your life. Relationships, work, your overall well-being. Like, you can't hide it forever.
Nope. It eventually catches up with you. At this point, people might start missing work or bailing on important plans because of hangovers. Or they prioritize drinking over everything else. They might withdraw from friends and family, get irritable easily, even become aggressive.
And it's not just mentally and emotionally. Physically, there are changes too, right?
Oh, yeah, for sure. Think about it. Weight fluctuations, that puffiness in the face, bloodshot eyes, just feeling drained all the time. Alcohol takes a toll on your whole body.
It sounds like at that stage, it'd be hard to deny that something is wrong. But even then, it's got to feel next to impossible to break free, right?
Yeah, that middle alcoholic stage is often when trying to cut back or quit is the hardest. That's because at this point, addiction has a much stronger grip, both physically and mentally.
Which brings us to that last stage that the ebook talks about, late alcoholic.
And that's the stage you obviously never want to reach. But it's important to understand the full scope of what this disease really is. This is when alcohol has basically taken over someone's entire life. They might have lost jobs, relationships have fallen apart, and their physical and mental health has taken a serious hit.
It's a pretty stark reminder of how bad things can get if addiction isn't treated. But even in those later stages, is recovery still possible?
Absolutely. It's never too late to get help and start healing. Recovery is always possible, no matter how far gone someone might seem.
That's a good thing to remember. So let's switch gears a bit and talk about what that road to recovery looks like. I know the ebook gets into different treatment options. Can you walk us through what those might be?
It does. And the good news is there's no one right way to treat alcohol addiction. The ebook talks about all sorts of options, from medication to therapy to just making changes to your lifestyle. It really emphasizes how important that well-rounded approach is.
So it's not just about getting someone physically sober, but giving them the support they need to heal emotionally and mentally as well.
Exactly. And when we're talking about that physical side of things, the book gets into some of the medications that doctors use to help manage those really intense withdrawal symptoms.
Which, let's be honest, can be pretty gnarly, right? I've heard some scary stories about people going cold turkey and having horrible anxiety, insomnia, even seizures.
Yeah, alcohol withdrawal is no joke. It can be really rough on your body, which is why medical supervision is so important, especially at the beginning. And that's where medications like benzodiazepines come in.
Benzodiazepines. Aren't those usually prescribed for anxiety and stuff like that? What do those have to do with alcohol withdrawal?
Well, when you stop drinking alcohol after you've been doing it heavily for a while, your central nervous system basically freaks out. It's like your brain can't turn off. This can lead to those super uncomfortable and sometimes dangerous withdrawal symptoms. The shakes, anxiety, not being able to sleep, even seizures in extreme cases. What benzodiazepines do is they calm things down. They work on the same parts of the brain as alcohol, so they can help lessen those withdrawal symptoms and make the detox process a bit smoother.
So they're like a temporary fix to help your brain get back to normal without the alcohol.
Pretty much. But it's important to remember that they're usually only used for a short time during detox because they can be habit-forming themselves. Still, they can be super helpful for getting through those really tough early stages of withdrawal.
Makes sense. So someone goes through detox, things start to calm down. What's next?
That's where therapy comes in. The book really emphasizes how important it is to figure out the root causes of why someone started drinking so much in the first place.
Because it's got to be more than just liking the taste, right? There's usually a deeper reason why someone develops a dependency on alcohol.
You're right. It's usually a symptom of something bigger going on. Past traumas, dealing with loss, social anxiety, depression, heck, even just chronic stress, those can all lead to someone leaning on alcohol as a crutch. Therapy gives you a safe place to process those issues, learn healthier ways to cope, and break that cycle of addiction.
So it's about giving people the tools to face life's challenges without needing alcohol to numb them out.
Exactly. And a lot of times that also means making changes to your lifestyle, which the ebook spends a lot of time talking about too.
Like what kind of lifestyle changes are we talking about here?
One of the biggest things is surrounding yourself with the supportive network. This might mean cutting ties with people or places that enable your drinking and connecting with people who support your sobriety. Support groups, close friends, family who get it, it all helps.
There's that saying, you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. Surround yourself with good people. It's easier to stay on track.
So true. But it goes beyond just your inner circle. Finding new hobbies and passions that bring you joy, that can make a huge difference too.
Because when you're stuck in that cycle of addiction, it's easy to forget what you enjoy doing for the pure fun of it, right?
Right. So whether it's picking up that old guitar again, finding a new creative outlet, or just getting out in nature more, it can be really therapeutic. It helps people rebuild their lives and find fulfillment in things other than alcohol.
And we can't forget about just taking care of ourselves physically, right?
Totally. The ebook has this whole section on how important nutrition and exercise are for recovery. Alcohol really messes with our bodies, draining all those essential nutrients.
You know, I always thought of addiction as mainly a mental and emotional thing, but this ebook really highlights the physical side of it all too.
It's all connected. Eating healthy foods, getting those endorphins pumping with some exercise, making sure you're sleeping well. It all gives your brain a fighting chance to heal and rewire itself.
So basically, it's about building a bunch of positive habits that reinforce each other.
Exactly. It's a holistic approach, taking care of your mind, body, and spirit to support lasting recovery.
We've covered a lot of ground here. The symptoms of alcohol addiction, the different stages, all the ways to treat it. But I know this ebook also gets into some lighter, more everyday stuff about alcohol, right? Like, why do some people seem to hold their liquor better than others? What's up with that?
You know, it's funny, right? Whenever I'm out with friends and the drinks are flowing, there's always that one person, right? They're like, 1 drink per hour keeps you in the clear. Well, we all know it's not that simple.
Oh, yeah, totally. That's one of those things people say, but in reality, everyone's different.
So let's set the record straight. The ebook actually dives into this. Why do some people seem to hold their liquor better than others?
So there are a bunch of factors that come into play, some more obvious than others. The first one is just like how big you are, your body composition. Basically, the more you weigh, the more water and blood you have in your system, which kind of dilutes the alcohol. Makes sense. So if you're bigger, it takes longer to feel the effects because your body is spreading it out more.
Exactly. The ebook uses this analogy. It's like the difference between having like a shot of espresso versus a big latte. The amount of caffeine might be the same, but the concentration is way different. But it gets even more interesting. Your ethnicity can actually play a role in how your body handles alcohol, too.
Really? That's wild. I had no idea. How does that work?
Well, some research shows that certain ethnic groups might have like genetic differences that affect how they break down alcohol. They might have less of a specific enzyme that's responsible for metabolizing alcohol in the liver, you know?
So if someone's body can't break down the alcohol as efficiently, does that mean they're going to get drunk faster?
Yep, pretty much. It can speed up intoxication and make those side effects way more intense, even if they're drinking the same amount as someone else. It's crazy how different our bodies can react.
It really is. I always thought it was just about how much you drink, but this is blowing my mind. What other surprising things affect our tolerance?
One that a lot of people have probably noticed themselves, what you've had to eat. Having food in your stomach slows down how quickly alcohol gets absorbed into your bloodstream.
Ah, okay. So it's like giving your body more time to process the alcohol before it hits you full force.
Yeah, exactly. But gotta be careful. While eating can definitely delay things, it doesn't mean you're drinking any less alcohol overall.
No magically sobering powers from a big plate of nachos then. Bummer.
Yeah.
What about how often you drink? Does that have anything to do with it?
Definitely. This ebook points out that those who drink regularly build up a higher tolerance than those who drink less often. It's like anything else. The more you do it, the better your body gets at it, which isn't always a good thing.
Yeah, it's like your liver's getting a workout, but not the kind you want, right? High tolerance often means your body has gotten used to having alcohol around, and that can be a slippery slope.
For sure. And that leads to one of the most interesting parts of this whole discussion. The power of perception.
Ooh, okay, I'm intrigued. Our minds can affect how drunk we feel.
You'd be surprised. There is this one study where people were given drinks they thought had alcohol in them, and a lot of them started acting drunk, even though there was no alcohol at all.
Wait, seriously?
Yeah.
So we can basically trick ourselves into being drunk. That's wild.
It's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
Our brains are powerful things. I guess what I'm trying to say is that whether you think you can handle your liquor or not, always listen to your body, drink responsibly, and prioritize your health.
Couldn't agree more. Some really great advice to wrap up this deep dive on alcohol addiction. We've thrown a lot of information your way today about how it works, the science behind it, those sneaky warning signs, and what recovery can look like. We hope this has given you a better understanding of this really complex issue.
Absolutely. And remember, if any of this resonated with you and you feel like you need support, don't hesitate to reach out to a professional. There's no shame in asking for help, you know?
Well said. That's it for this deep dive, everyone. We'll see you next time, ready to unpack another fascinating topic.